Helical versus offset. What does that mean in the world of archery? So as you're fletching your arrows, you may hear folks talk about, oh, I want to have a left offset or I want to have a left helical. What are they talking about? So what they're talking about is when you hear someone mention an offset, what that means is that they're taking their vane and they're just you can have your vane sitting straight on the arrow shaft so that it just runs straight down the middle of it, or you can offset it to the left or offset it to the right. And that's going to dictate which way your arrow spins. So when they talk about a simple like left offset, what they're using is they're using a straight clamp. You can see this one is straight here, versus a helical. You can see this clamp. These are two Bitzenberger fletching jig clamps. This one is straight, this one is helical. Now, what the helical does is it puts a curve in the fletching. And all that does is it gives you a little more arrow spin. It induces more spin into the arrow than simply doing a left offset. So I'll show you two arrows here. Two target arrows with big vanes so you can see it a little better. So you can see this arrow here has a left offset. The vane is straight on the shaft, but it is set so that the front end of the fletching sits a little bit to the left of the rear end. In other words, you're going to look at it from the back, and whichever way the front of the vane sits, that determines left or right. So as I look at this arrow down the shaft, you can see that the front end of the vane sits to the left of the back end. And again, it is straight, versus this one here has a helical. So if I hold them up together, you can see the orange one has more of a curve in it. It was fletched with a left helical. So if you do an offset and a helical, you're kind of maximizing the spin of that arrow. You know, the offset's going to induce spin, and the helical, the reason you put that in is that's going to cause more spin in your arrow. So why might you want an offset over a helical or vice versa? Well, quite simply, if all you have is a straight clamp at home and you don't want to buy another clamp, having the straight clamp allows you to induce spin by going to an offset without having to use a helical. A helical, if you want to go that route, is, like we mentioned, is going to induce more spin. So target archery, you want the more spin that you have, theoretically, the more stabilization you're going to give your arrow. Now, that will come back to bite you in certain situations. When you shoot distance, too much spin can cause what's called a parachute effect. And actually the arrow is spinning so much and it's flying so long that actually the back end of the arrow starts to destabilize. So having maximum spin is not necessarily the best in all situations. But short distances, indoor target archery, those folks tend to like to have a lot of spin. They're only shooting 18 meters, 20 yards. So a lot of spin is going to be good for them. Versus then when you start shooting long distance field archery, TAC events, 3D, things like that. Once you're shooting longer distances, they're going to have less spin in their vane setups to prevent that parachute effect. And quite frankly, it's through your testing. You know, to figure out what is best for you, you're actually going to have to test a little bit of offset, a lot of offset, a little bit of helical, a lot of helical. You're going to have to play around with that to figure out what works best for your setup.